My name is Camia Weaver. I am the Justice Coordinator for Canadian Mental Health Association, but have had a long-standing interest and involvement in restorative justice. I have comments or suggestions, I think, rather than questions. One of the things that I have found very frustrating in working in restorative justice is a lot of it is lack of funding and support from the places we should be getting it from. And I think what has occurred to me, and I feel really strongly about, is that we need to have a much stronger association. I would really like to see a provincial association of restorative justice, because that gives us a really strong voice and a really united voice, and it gives us a forum in which to discuss the kind of issues that we need to deal with in terms of process, and it gives us the ability to interact with each other. And as part of that, I also think that interaction is really important. And so another suggestion I have is that a listserv for people involved in restorative justice, so that you can have discussions about issues that come up. I think the things that were raised about the sort of concerns and issues that we need to deal with in dealing with domestic violence and sexual assault issues is a really real one that we need to really look at in terms of how we do things, and to use the supports that are there. I think the same is true in a diversion project that I'm working on right now for people with mental illness who come in conflict with the law. It's another area where I want to begin a process of having diversion which involves restorative justice process for people with mental illness, because I think it's very important. But again, it's an area where we need to use outside supports to help that process, to help the understanding about mental illness and about the impact of mental illness on people, as well as inform people with mental illness about the impact through that process of their actions on other people. So I really just want stronger collaboration, because I think it gives us a lot of strength.
Okay, thank you. So just to pull out the themes that were shared there, ongoing funding is crucial for sustainability. Having a provincial association of restorative justice to bring connectedness, to formalize the connections that are there, and greater communication, an example being a listserv, and also expanding the vision of restorative justice to unique groups like those who are suffering with mental illnesses. Does that capture it? Awesome. Thank you so much. Anyone else have a comment?
My name is Graham Kelly. I'm from Victoria, and I'm pretty new to the process, but it feels like a really good fit with the youth work that I'm doing and work with families in my community. What I'd like to ask the plenary speakers now is, one of the great things about this is it seems to be in some way rooted in the traditional circles of the First Peoples of this area, and I'm wondering how, particularly for the people of that background on the panel now, how do you see a lot of those traditions reflected in the modern circles that are happening?
Within our organization of the Nisga'a Nation, we have what we call the Ayuk, which is a Nisga'a law, and within that it was a common practice that we've always have done this. The Restorative Justice Program in our area is called the Euchamis Restorative Justice Program, and Euchamis, it means the process that we've always taken when something was done wrong to another person. And we stayed away, and we still do that in our program. I only used it today, victim and offender. Back in our area, we use people who have been wronged and the people who have done the wrong. It lessens that impact of being labeled.
My name is Ian Ward Cox. I'm from Grand Isle up in Babine Lake. Our program has been so successful up there in the north that we've eliminated what is known as grade 4 problems, whatever that grade 4 means. I still have to find out. Meager little things that are attributed to mainly to teenagers, to school kids, maybe a little bit older than that, with the result that the major things are the only ones that are left. And the most common ones are the ones that Tracy Porteous outlined right now, abuse in its various forms. This is all that can be spoken about in the area. This is the only thing that remains to be dealt with. But it was made very clear to us that we have certain limitations as facilitators. These limitations include various things. There's a whole list of offences that we dare not deal with. And now Tracy's brought up the abuse question, which we as facilitators have no mandate over whatsoever. We cannot handle it, although many of us are able to do so. And in an attempt at trying to get an understanding of what we're dealing with here, many of us have gone to the Justice Institute for further training to get an insight into what is happening there, despite the fact that as facilitators we cannot handle it. At the Justice Institute, you get a tremendous amount of insight into how to deal with abusive situations. But we are still limited as facilitators. We cannot do that. And as facilitators, there is no further training. And this is something that I could personally appeal to Jim about.
So would it be, just for clarification, there may be some people who don't understand the issue that's being addressed here, but when the Ministry of Public Safety establishes guidelines for community accountability programs, it recommends that we look at level 3 and level 4 crimes only, which are lower level, and issues of sexual assault, domestic violence, cases like that are not to be handled through community accountability programs. And my understanding is that's because there's a feeling that those are serious crimes that need to be processed through a court process. So that's the issue that's being raised here. However, I think what you're also saying is that the need is there, people are getting training. Is there a possibility in the future then to look at how these programs can be seen as being credible, to be skilled, to have the processes in place where these more serious crimes could be looked at? Is that what I'm hearing you?
That's
you're
part
asking?
of it.
My name is Gay Armstrong, and I'm from Ladysmith on Vancouver Island. I'm the coordinator of the CAP program there. And I just have 2 points. The first point is our initial commentator, or whatever you want to call her, the lady back here somewhere, who spoke to us about having a stronger organization provincially. I would very strongly support that, because we sometimes forget that we're a community-based program. And that should, but we do all have to meet the needs of our community. And I think we need to meet the expectations and the standards that are set by the province for this program. And I think that that's pretty slack. And I'd like to see more work done at that at the provincial level to draw us together. And then we would have an association. And then my second point is that, I don't know how you delicately put this, we're being split down the middle. For example, if you operate as a restorative justice coordinator and a facilitator, and you do a case, and the case is the kid's been shoplifting. Well, why is he shoplifting? Because he's on marijuana. Do I have the right as a facilitator to say, okay, is this problem shoplifting or is this problem marijuana? You're going to drug counseling. That's not my prerogative. And yet I find where we're getting split here is that we're an after-the-fact organization. We're not a before-the-fact. The problems already exist. How do we deal with these problems? Because when you're dealing with teenagers, you are not dealing with, he stole a $1.49 scarf from the drugstore. You're dealing with that he doesn't get along with his parents, that he's doing badly in school because he's already on marijuana. We have to have more ability to have access to the professionals. Now they're sitting here, all of them. We have the police for one thing, and we have probation officers, we have social workers, mental health workers, children's aid. They're all here. But we as an organization have absolutely no authority to go to these people or for any reason that they should accept anything from us. We cannot talk to them because everything is confidential as far as they're concerned. But this program of restorative justice can only do so much good. And it's very basic good right now. It's taking money out, it's taking cases out of the court. It's saving the province millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. And we're mostly all volunteers. but it's not really doing the job because we're not able to help these kids.
So let me just summarize and catch what we've talked about here. Again, this theme of a provincial association would bring strength. And another piece that was added here that wasn't mentioned before was there is a diversity within our communities about how we apply restorative justice, but we should be all meeting certain level of standards. And so, revisiting that issue of what are the standards that we all should be meeting to make sure that our work is excellent and credible and not doing further harm, but actually making a difference. That was an important theme. And I think also this latter piece is the underlying issues underneath a crime have to be addressed if you want to meaningfully resolve that incident and help that person so they don't recommit a crime. And without connection with other people in the community can help that process, that's going to be really, really tough. And so one of the questions I think that for our recorders to be carrying forward is how to help RJ groups build those connections with other professionals so that the underlying factors in a young offender's life can be meaningfully addressed so that life change can happen. Has that caught it?
That's exactly it.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Sharon Card from Pender Island. We've been talking a lot about restorative justice where we've had someone who actually comes to official attention. We've got victims and offenders and so on. Restorative justice seems to be we're dealing with conflict that comes to official notice, and I'm wondering if anybody has had experience in restorative justice as a prevention. So we get into some working with people who are having some conflicts or potential conflicts before they come into the official review of the police or whoever. If some programs do that sort of thing without people feeling as if they're getting involved with restorative justice or labeled as victims and offenders, but rather community members who may be having differences if there's some prevention sort of stuff going on.
Anyone want to speak to that? So this is the issue of being proactive rather than responsive after an event has taken place.
So what we do is we taught young people and adults circle processes and started practicing and promoting and living the values of these processes, and we use them all the time. So young people are using them with each other, they're using them when there are problems, they're using them for educational sessions. Our adult education program is just, they hang a shingle out, believe it or not, and people show up and sit in circle to just talk about what's going on. We used it to get people to kind of think in different ways and do problem solving. So one of the things we found really effective is finding natural places to practice these processes so that people learn them and share them. And what we've seen is that then young people are doing them at home. We have people who've started to do them in other organizations, in other schools, in state institutions. All of that spread with no funding, just by taking, practicing it as a way to be. So I think that's immensely possible and powerful for communities.
I can just add to that too that we face that very same question in developing restorative action in our schools, and a lot of restorative action has started at the high school level, and the question that came to us after a while was really we should be beginning this as a foundational teaching of values and ways of relating and communicating, and we need to start it at elementary. And so our project this year, as we're expanding restorative action, is to build a proactive capacity building program into the elementary schools where you're teaching children from the very earliest days on how to communicate and resolve conflict in positive ways to build skills into them, and then eventually a lot of those kids go on to become peer mediators and other things like that. So I think it's a great question. Thank you very much.
So my name is Debbie Neville, if there's anybody left here who doesn't know that. Welcome everyone on the part of registration. I have two parts. One is political, and that has to do with what I'm just starting to hear about a provincial organization. We voted that down in Chilliwack in 2002 because we didn't want the constraints that would give us. So I certainly want to look at that. What I've seen develop since 2002 are incredibly creative restorative justice programs all over the place. And I don't know how, I understand standards would be a great idea. I'm not too sure who would monitor those. And if it just means we'd be given a smaller and smaller box to work within, I would have problems with that. So I just wanted to say that.
So it sounds like the idea of a provincial association needs to be looked at from all sides to make sure it's of great benefit and enhances growth, doesn't limit or reduce capacity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the last point, and the reason my voice is shaking, is I just want to talk about sexual abuse. Sexual abuse. So I'll be sitting in on Tracy's today, and I was sexually abused between 5 and 11 years old, and I just want to say the more harm that's been caused, the more we need a healing process, and that doesn't mean it happens, immediately after an event. So Corrections Service of Canada is doing some brilliant work, started in Quebec, bringing victims to prisons to meet with offenders who were not their offender, but surrogate offenders, I guess you can say. And they're here today, and I encourage people to talk to them. And sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Powerful stories are close to our hearts.
The more harm that's been caused, the more we need a healing process and a restorative practice. So thinking at the front end and the work we're doing and going into schools is all brilliant, but everywhere along the line, victim-offender reconciliation, if it's just when someone's getting out of prison or while they're in or when they get out or wherever we can fit it in. So just keep a really big picture on restorative practices.
Right. And I gather what you're saying in there too is that timing, like sometimes with a very, very serious offense,
absolutely,
years and years and years later, it can still be very meaningful to be addressing that.
Even with minor offenses in Oak Bay, we haven't been able to get victims to come forward. They've got whatever their property back and they don't want to come forward. Or it's a drug dealer offense, which we're looking at now. It's serious in the sense the child has been moved from school to school and is about to get pushed to another school out of our community. We're trying to say, this is our problem right here and now. We can find a surrogate victim. We can find a drug dealer who's done 20 years in prison. Let's get him in as the victim. We can just think
outside
creatively.
the box.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I just, I can't remember, I can't see where you went, Debbie. I just want to honor you for having the courage to stand up, because I think it's very difficult for anybody to identify as somebody who survived victimization. I just want to honor that, what you've said. And also want to clarify that and kind of reiterate what you're saying is that responding in any capacity to abuse, especially abuse in childhood, is very, very complex and very deep. And so I think that I talked a little bit earlier about if any of these programs or restorative justice programs are going to be going down that road. And I think that there is some potential, as the fellow from Babine Lake was talking about, why can't we? And I think why can't we is because of the complexities of victimization. And I think that if there is an opportunity to consider it, there needs to be a number of considerations and safety measures and standards and training and evaluation put in place before we would go down that road. We've consulted with women who are survivors of abuse and Aboriginal women across the province, and what they have told us is that thus far any experience of something that looks like mediation or some kind of a restorative process hasn't hit the mark. It hasn't met their need yet. So I think that we have a lot to learn from the restorative processes that you're doing right now, and before we would be entering into the complexity of dealing with sexual assault or childhood sexual abuse or years of being battered, there's a lot that we could learn. We need to do more research. And as I said, I've got some standards that we developed with the John Howard Society that might, sort of be an opportunity for us together to have that dialogue, to consider some of these issues before we would go down that road.
Well, what I'm going to reiterate is what Debbie said: think big. You can use restorative practices at any level, at any kind of conflict, or to do any kind of prevention. And I also would like to commend Tracy for what she's saying as well, because I think there has to be some caution in there as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you who participated with your questions and comments, and to our